Welcome to the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast on Mintwave Radio and all podcast platforms. If you're a coach, consultant, therapist, or healer with an online program and would like to find out how to grow your business whilst having fun podcasting, go to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free. Let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to today's show. And today I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to get your guests to be your advocates, how to nurture the episode promotion process. Now, I've always interviewed guests, right? I only more recently even do solo episodes. I totally understand that the idea of growing your podcast, having guests, you're borrowing other people's audiences, and that there is a cost to it. There's a cost in time to actually research your guests, reach out to them, get them to complete a form with their bio, their headshot, their links, etc. Maybe you prepare an episode release form. All this costs time and money. And then the actual recording and the post-production. It's great if your guests can promote for you because it gets an opportunity for you to get in front of their audience. But quite often what we found is that it's a one-way street. And I don't think this is done deliberately. It's just that we're all busy. We have our own business, but your guest also has their own business. And quite often, if you haven't demonstrated what your process is, after the recording, they've forgotten until you let them know when it's releasing, if you even do, because I've spoken to many other hosts who do guests on other people's podcasts, and they tell me like it's crazy. I never even heard from them again, which is madness because they would have been willing to share the episode on their social media platforms, to their email list. So what can you do to encourage your guests to do the same? So tip number 1 is all about the prep. As I said, most hosts do a lot of work in the beginning up to the recording, but it doesn't end there. If you can let them know during the recording what your particular process is, and also what social media platforms you will be promoting on, and find out what social media platforms your guest primarily uses. That is really key. And make sure you are connected, because in the past, I know I've done this when I've gone to promote the episode. I can't even tag them because we're not even connected. So it's all about prepping in advance. Now, also, if you can't set the release date on the day of the recording, make sure you do as soon as you know it. And don't be afraid to over communicate. I love it when other hosts are letting me know specifically what I need to do because I'm more than willing to do it. So step 2 or tip number 2 sounds quite obvious, but I know for a fact that many don't do this. Once you've recorded their episode, send them a simple email and or DM thanking them for taking their time in their day to appear on your show. Let them know that you value the information that they gave on the show and that you appreciate it. That will go a long way. Now, tip number 3 is all about the assets that you're going to create. Now, as I said, your guests are busy with their own business. They're not going to take the time to create assets about an episode that they appeared on for your show. You need to do it for them. They've already given you a headshot and their bio. So create some images in Canva for the episode. Create some social media posts from the perspective of the guest, in the first tense of the guest's perspective, about that particular episode, because then it's a simple copy and paste. The more you can do that's going to save them time, or if they have a VA, it's very clear what their VA needs to do to promote that episode. Now, it won't just be social media posts. You could prepare a blog post for them and embed the particular episode in the blog post. Even add the video, maybe if you've uploaded it to YouTube, add it in the blog post so that they can use it on their blog or on Medium. And again, write it, have it written, the blog post written in the first tense from the guest's perspective. They were the guest. They are more likely then to use that, whether they have a blog or whether they create a LinkedIn article. That's going to help you both. Now, on top of that, you could create some short form videos of the episode, because if your podcast is purely audio, you can still repurpose the video into 25 to 30-second short form videos. And again, with a little bit of blurb, give them everything they need so that they are willing to promote you on their social media platforms. Even write a blurb for their newsletter and encourage them to send it out maybe a week before. Now, after it actually airs, they're going to need the specific links for that episode, maybe for Apple, for Spotify. And if they want to embed it, maybe on their website, give them the embed code. So if you created a Google folder with all of these assets in, so that they or their team can use it, and it literally is a copy and paste so that they don't have to take time out of their day to write anything, the more likely they are to help promotion. But it doesn't stop there, even if you just create a Google folder. Again, people get distracted and they don't know when. So let them know via email each day you want them to send something out. If you use a CRM, this can be automated so that a week before the newsletter article comes out, maybe a day before, it's a snippet of the actual podcast episode with a bit of blurb. They put that on their social media. Maybe after it airs, you give them the specific link for Apple Podcasts for that episode, not your whole podcast, so that they can promote, because they are promoting themselves, right? But the added bonus is that your listeners grow, your downloads grow, so that you are being introduced to their audience. Now, tip number 4 is something that we weren't doing and that we are doing right now, is on the day of the recording, if you know the release date, book a live stream, say 2 days later. And if you use StreamYard, then you can invite them on, give them the title and the description, and they can connect to 2 of their social media platforms and you can go live. And then live streaming to 2 of your platforms as well as 2 of their platforms, you can say, oh, we had a great conversation on this particular episode. Thank you for being there. You gave so many good nuggets, and the link for people to go and actually listen to the episode. That way you're getting in front of their audience live. It doesn't have to be long. It could be just 5 minutes. That is another great way at increasing your downloads. And tip number 5, depending on how big your guest is, you know what? If they've got a really large audience, ask them to sponsor your episode when they do their next episode for their podcast. At the end of the day, one thing's for certain is that if you don't ask, you won't get. And for some, they may even offer to do it for a fee. So if it's worth it and they've got a large audience, why not ask them to do a shout out about being on your podcast and they share the episode link on their show? So actually, that was 5 tips, not 4. So why do people not do this? I think one of the things is that many fear over communicating, but please do not fear that. As I said, we're all busy and sometimes we just need reminders, because we may have had all the intention of doing the promotion and then time passes by so quickly, we get caught up with other things. And if it isn't booked in the calendar, you may not do it. I know I'm the same. If something's not booked in officially on my calendar, I'm going to forget it. So don't be afraid to over communicate. Keep in touch because it's not just a transaction. Guesting on podcasts is an opportunity to build relationships. So don't be afraid to keep going back to them, letting them know. You can encourage them when you do a post of the episode and maybe tag them in, send them a DM and encourage them to repost it. Hit the reshare button because again, that's going to go a long way. So actually that's six tips. So what else stops people from doing this? It's really being that organized. As if you're a host yourself, there's a lot going in to the prep, the run up to the recording, the post-production, and then there's this other step for the podcast promotion. So it's all about being organized so that you know you have a checklist of what needs to be done and when. That's going to help you in so many ways. Now, another thing is, I suppose, the time. So again, maybe block out once a week what needs to be done for the upcoming episode, what needs to be shared, what you want your guest to do so that you are organized. So if you want some more tips like this, if you are thinking about having a podcast and you do feel a little bit overwhelmed with all the work that needs to be done with the run up, the recording and the post-production work and the episode promotion, come join us. We do monthly workshops where we give you your whole blueprint on what needs to be done, and also our implementation days where we cover every part of this whole process so that when you have clarity, it's a lot easier to do, because when you can put it in your calendar and it's crystal clear what needs to be done and when, this is going to boost your podcast numbers. I'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to today's episode on the Podcast Profits Unleashed podcast. If you're a coach, consultant, therapist, or healer who would like to drive sales whilst having fun podcasting, head over to podcastprofitsunleashed.com/free and find out how you can turn your podcast into a sales machine. We'll see you on the next episode.